Dudes, material studies, it's what's for lunch. Okay, maybe not, but if you're a studying artist or illustrator, digital artist, you're going to want to make a little time. You're going to want to make a little time to do some material studies. Now, I get a lot of people asking me a lot of different types of questions, but one that I get asked a lot is, how do I draw like this other artist? Or how do I get a cartoony style? Or how do I render metals? Or how do I paint dark fantasy? I get people asking questions like this all the time. And the answer is in doing studies. But that begs the question, how does one go about doing a visual study? So what I've done here is I've, much like many of my material studies, my digital art workouts that I've been doing, I've found myself a material that I want to learn how to paint. And in this case, it's a Dark Souls screenshot. You can see the armor in the left side of the image. That is from a photograph or a screenshot from some of the promo art from Dark Souls. And I'm not going to pass that off as art that I've done or anything like that. This is a study. I find a source image that I want to dissect, and I cut that out and put it right into Photoshop, and then I start painting right next to it to replicate what I'm seeing. And I'm evaluating how I can replicate that material. I'm building into my subconscious the kind of dents that you're seeing, the kind of little rivets and edges and dings and scratches that you're seeing in that material. And I'm trying to break it down with as few brush strokes as possible to try to capture the same type of material and build this into my visual vocabulary so that when I am sitting down to do my dark fantasy character design or my own cool armor design, I'll already have some kind of vocabulary, some kind of visual understanding of how to render it to make it look like the way that I want it to look. So why am I doing these studies? Well, because one of the questions that comes up a lot is, what are the things that concept artists and illustrators should be practicing to improve their skills all the time? And this is something that I do to improve my skills all the time. Sometimes it's while I'm doing a painting, I'll try to find a material or a lighting situation that I want to have, a mood, for instance, that I want to have in my own painting that I'm trying to do, and I'll have that on the same sheet, literally with it next to my painting, so that I can color dab from it and get some of the interesting color varieties that might accidentally pop up from there. You can see there's like this interesting browns in the bottom part, in the shadow part of the metal, and there's interesting like bounced light from what it would probably be moonlight off of the right side, and if I have a metal in my scene that's lit in a similar fashion, it would probably blow out a lot of that with the light from the moonlight, But there's also, I wanted to soften it and not have too much contrast. I know that color dodge will bloom out some of that blue into my shadows, and it will also saturate my core shadows, which is also nice. So I'm using a lot of the techniques and things that I know how to do, and I'm adding to my vocabulary of tools, but I'm also adding to my understanding of like how best to create this reflective metal, like how sharp are some of those details, those brush strokes and things like that. How much are those popping out, and how much are they just soft, and it really is something that the more you do, the better you get at it. Now, there are a number of takeaways that you can get from just that one material study, but I wanted to move on. I wanted to pick up a couple of more things, like what happens when you have a similar color of metal, but it's in a little bit more of a warm light. And you'll notice here that in our sample image, which is also from Dark Souls, we've got the same kind of metal, but it's in a room, or it's in a situation that has a warm light across the right side of it. And we're just kind of replicating that maybe cool light from the camera. So it's kind of like maybe a moonlight behind the viewer's eye above their head, and the warm light along the right side of the metal chest piece. Beyond the benefits of being able to render materials in different kinds of lighting and rendering different types of materials in different art styles, the other benefits of doing these types of studies are that you can extend your vocabulary in terms of construction as well. So You'll notice all the little rivets that are going on here, some of the leather straps and how they're holding the metal plating together and how that metal plating is layering. This is a big difference that you see between more advanced illustrators and conceptual designers and more of the beginner type of designers, is that you'll notice that the more of a beginner doesn't really think about how things were built, and a more advanced artist or a more experienced artist has done a lot of studies that you can tell their visual understanding of the construction of armor, for instance, just as a simple example, is a little bit more believable. It looks hammered. It looks like something that was made by a craftsman. It looks like something that was made by a blacksmith. And this is something that if I were to try to just paint this out of my head, I probably wouldn't think of the kind of color blending that you're seeing. I wouldn't think of some of the color variations, how you've got the kind of cool moonlight for your camera light, and you've got these warm lights for your environment light, bouncing all that warm light off of the other areas of the surface. Things like that, the only way to really get that is through doing studies, either by having reference on your immediate painting that you're working on at that time. There are times when I'll take a piece of armor or something like that from an existing painting or from a reference image or a reference material, and I'll have that in my Photoshop file while I'm creating the shapes out of it, utilizing the same kind of lighting and the same type of material treatment that I'm seeing in that reference image, and color dabbing directly from it. And you'll learn things about keeping your color relationships working as well from doing these types of studies. And I want to encourage you to find some materials that you would like to study, find some art styles that you would like to study. If you really want to draw that Rick and Morty art style, you could take the same approach. And I'm not talking about rendering it realistically. I'm talking about copying what you're seeing and dissecting it, really giving a lot of thought to how it's being constructed. Are they using layer effects? Are they using different types of brushes? Are they using flats? Are there things like flat shaded? And how is that flat shading affecting it? I also recommend that you maybe dig into doing some 3D and working with some materials in 3D if you really want to improve your painting. These are techniques and things that most concept artists that I know and professional illustrators that I know working in video games are doing constantly. With every free minute of your time, there are a million things to study. And this is just one of those things. So thank you for joining me on this episode of Trent's Art Workouts. I hope you're enjoying this series. I've kind of fallen off a little bit on it, but I'm getting back into it. It's just something that I dabble with now and then. I've got a couple more of these in the pipe for things that I want to explore, and you can come along for that ride as well. Of course, if you want to subscribe, I always enjoy the company. It's certainly awkward if nobody shows up. And if you'd like to dig in a little deeper, I do have my box sets of tutorials and legendary Photoshop cheats that I've created that kind of just summarize a lot of the things that I really wish that I knew. It's, of course, as always, my goal to try to make the kind of YouTube channel that I wish I always would have had years ago, showing some of these techniques and tricks and practices and things that you can do to really speed your process up and get you to a higher level faster. So dudes, that's it for me on this one. Thank you so much for stopping by. I will catch you all. Manyan de bon.